We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. So, as we head out to visit states and cities that have such a historical and powerful background, I keep thinking to myself, what do you expect to get out of this trip? What do you want to learn? And exactly how can you use what you know and will know by the end of this trip to better society today? And honestly, I did not have not one answer to contribute to my thoughtful questions. The only response I had to my own concerns was a quote that my grandpa always told me, and it was to keep your mind open and let your eyes listen. So, I share with you a week of traveling to national monuments and sites that are significant to the civil rights movement, leading to a more in depth response and reflection, answering my personal interrogatory thoughts. Now, this part of the museum tour was probably the most powerful to me, and I say that because what you are looking at are titled lynching ties. These are ties, and it signifies how white supremacy groups would be so formal in being a lynching spectator. They were often dressed in their Sunday's best to lynch African American people. And to me, just imagining that is very scary, honestly. Like, I have no other words to describe it. It's just very It just gives me chills thinking about it. And the people in these crowds, they did not even try to hide their identities. So what you are seeing on the ties are pictures of people who have posed on postcards and certain other accessories that they send out, like in glory of what they have done, in glory of lynching a black person. Moving on. Now, to go along with the lynching ties, these are titled lynching hats. Each hat represents witnesses of the crowd that would often gather just to observe and watch a lynching of a black person. And each hat has a phrase that would kind of correspond to a different type of spectator that would be around. And crazy thing is, most of them were white men, women, and get ready for it, children. Yeah, children. Now, if you thought the hats and the ties were pretty disturbing, these are titled lynching shirts. Now, each shirt honors a victim of lynching between 1882 and 1968. So, the majority of the people who are victims of lynching were mostly African American men. However, it also included women, children, Jews, and other minorities. Each tag carries the name and description of a lynching victim. And so they told us, to reach out and touch the tag just to marinate on that and connect with this history. Now, this room at the Southern Poverty Law Center was very significant to me because I got the chance to pledge. I pledged that I will continue the march that was started 63 years ago and even before, and I pledged to stand up for justice and stand up for anyone that who may be considered different, who may be experiencing racism, discrimination, prejudice, what have you. I want to be down for the cause. So, what me and my professor were trying to do is pinpoint exactly where the attacks happened at, which they happened all along this road. But, the popular photos that we are used to seeing, if you look real closely right here where the stop sign or the speed limit sign is, that is where the infamous photo of John Lewis being attacked, as well as other prominent figures during the civil rights movement. That is where they were also attacked at. And there's also a photo of a woman laying out on the road and a police officer standing over her. Right here in the center is where that happened. So, that is just a little snippet, a little sneak peek of what the trip was like. It was very informative, very real, very humbling, honestly. It was just such, whew, it was heavy, definitely. And in one of the films that we watched, it was actually at the King Center in Atlanta. We watched the film and I actually teared up a little bit because it just made me reflect and think about how have we come to this? Like, why are we here? How did we get here? And even though like we can definitely come up with a few answers to those questions, it's just like, why? Like, what is the point? Why deliberately belittle a whole community of people, a whole community of people of color? Why do that? Like, what's the point? And that is really like the question that I kept asking myself, like each time we went to a new national monument, each time we went to a new site, like that is what was constantly going through my mind. And only thing I can think of is fear. You cannot control the color of your skin. The color of your skin, the amount of melanin that you are given is a gift from God. That is something that God painted on you. You know what I'm saying? And for someone to judge somebody because of that, you're basically judging what God has done. You're basically questioning and doubting God. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you want to get spiritual about it. But it was really hard. It's really hard for me to grasp that. Like, makes no sense to me. But this was definitely just a humbling experience, and I've said that before and I'll keep saying it again, because it just hits home. It definitely hits home. My family has been victim to segregation, to slavery, to the Jim Crow laws, all of that. And crazy thing is, I think I was like in 4th or 5th grade, I did a project where we had to do a family tree, and so my mom got us an account for Ancestry, and we found out that my great-great-grandparents were slaves. So that would be her great-grandparents. And when you think about it, it's not that long ago. My grandpa, her dad, his parents were slaves. So that was just really crazy to me. It was actually hard to find a lot of the information because back then they didn't consider Black people to be a part of like the census or anything like that, because they were basically like property or what have you. So they never considered them in the census, and so it was hard to dig up all that information, and it took like some weeks to find, but eventually we got to it and found that out, and it was just crazy to me. And another thing is Sly County, it's in Georgia. So technically on my mom's side of the family, the original name, last name is Sly, and Black people were given the last name of their masters. Crazy thing is, Sly County in Georgia, it was owned by a slave master, and his last name was Sly. I can't remember his first name right now, but to think about that, that's crazy, because thinking about my ancestors and way down the line, like, he is the one, that's where our name came from, and it's so weird. It's so weird to me, but it's interesting, but it's also really sad. Like, we were stripped of everything that we came here with, and given something totally new that wasn't even a part of us. And so, and not just like my family, like, you know, a lot of African American people, a lot of Black people, like that's what happened. And I don't know if people know this, but Malcolm X, that's why he chose to X out his last name, because it was the name of a white man and he didn't want that. So he changed his name to Malcolm X. He had no last name. His first name was Malcolm, the name that his parents gave him. So anyway, just a little fun fact. But overall, like I said, this trip was very eye-opening. And to answer my question about what can I do with what I know now and what I did know before to better like our society today, I can definitely get more involved for sure, and I can definitely put a lot of more effort into fighting injustice. Like if somebody's saying something to me, sometimes I tend to ignore it if it's derogatory or discriminatory or racist or whatever. I just ignore it because, you know, pick your battles. But sometimes in certain situations, I think it's okay to stand up for yourself, and that's something that I tend to lack. And if I see it happening to somebody else, I can definitely stand up for them. But you got to be careful, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation that you can't get out of, and you don't want to put yourself in danger or harm's way or what have you. So you definitely want to scope it out and see if it's really worth it. But at times, I think that if it keeps happening and the same person or people keep doing it to you, I feel like it's okay to be respectful about it and be like, hey, look, it's not cool, like stop, you know, things like that. But and then too, I can definitely get involved in certain organizations that help to fight prejudice, racism, and all those types of things. So that is my spill on this civil rights tour that I went on. It was definitely such a good experience. I keep saying that, but it really was. Like, it really was so good. And I just want us to find our way back to respect and love, honestly, because somewhere along the way, like, we lost that. And I feel like if people truly respected other people and truly loved other people, we wouldn't have these types of issues. Like, people would be able to accept people for what they come with, for who they are, no matter the color of their skin or anything like that. Because I cannot tell you how many times I walk out that door and I constantly feel like the tension, like I feel judged, and I don't want that. Like, whether it be like they're judging me on my hair or my clothes or my skin tone or how I talk or anything like that. Like, I don't want that. I know you can't change what someone does or how they feel or what they think. I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, like, people just need to respect people. Like, you should respect how we are. Like, respect how someone else is. Like, that is who they are. You can't change that, just like they can't change you. And you don't have to like everybody, but you definitely should respect other people, because I guarantee you, if it was reversed and it happened to you, you would not feel comfortable. And I just want to feel comfortable walking out the door each day, you know? So anyway, and there was a quote that actually stuck out to me at one of the museums, and it was by Dr. King. And it says, if you will protest courageously and yet with dignity and Christian love, when the history books are written in future generations, the historians will have to pause and say, there lived a great people, a Black people, who injected new meaning and dignity into the veins of civilization. That to me is enough said. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm just truly humbled by this experience. All of the pictures, all of the food, all of the memories, all of the films, everything that we were able to do within this week's time literally has just changed my perspective on a whole lot of things. And I am just really glad that I was able to do it. So like the shirt says, the march continues, and I hope that you can do something to fight injustice as well.